the intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Hey, Star Trek Fleet Command fans, are you ready for some math? Yeah? Probably not, but today I want to talk about Strange New World James Kirk and how he works. And there's an opportunity to start talking about shield bypass or shield mitigation or shield deflection, however you want to word it. I personally dislike using the word mitigation because mitigation for me applies to something else in the game. So I don't like calling it mitigation. But we're going to talk about him, how exactly he works, and then how he compares to other officers in the game who have maybe similar reading abilities. Now, the reason I emphasize reading is because the captain's ability says, Strange New World, James Kirk reduces enemy shield mitigation by 40% for non-armada hostiles. What does that mean? Because reducing it sounds like it's just a flat removal. I mean, you tell me if that's how it sounds to you, right? Now, let's talk about the officer ability real quick. Increases base weapons damage by a small amount, and I do think that that is useful. Here are the full amounts right here. You see, with full synergization, he can actually go to 100%, which is key because 100% does equal 0. But without that, what does he do? How does he work? And this is an opportunity, again, like I said, to go through the math of how Star Trek Fleet Command works. And I will go ahead and warn you, this one is needlessly confusing. So go ahead and comment down below your favorite needlessly confusing Star Trek Fleet Command moment. What math have you run into? What thing in the game have made you go, why? Because this is probably going to be one of them. So here's how he maxes out. Now, we know that he doesn't work like his friend. And when I say his friend, his like compadre, companion, I'll go ahead and move on over. He doesn't work like this guy. How do I know? Well, when fighting hostiles, decreases hostile shield mitigation by 20%. Reads very similar, correct? Actually, we'll put this back on the screen. Do they not read correctly? Reduces enemy shield mitigation, but this guy, he doesn't reduce, he decreases. Yeah, it's very confusing. But let me show you how we know they're not the same. The reason or the proof that we know that they don't work exactly the same is this right here. So if you look at the very top of your screen, there is James Kirk from Strange New Worlds with a 55% reduction. Now that is because he has synergy. Who does he have synergy with? This guy, Kirk. Kirk is at this level 35%. Well, if we did some quick math, 55% plus 35% would equal, you got it, chat, 90%. However, if you look right over there, you can tell that it did not do that. In fact, of the remaining damage you see, it actually only did about 20%. So how does that math out? How can I tell it did 20%? Because 800,000 reached the hole, 200,000 didn't, and that's just simple. Add those together, that percentage is easy to calculate. So we know that they don't work the same. How exactly do they work? And thus, do they have value? Or better yet said, if you're watching this during the month that Strange New World James T. Kirk has come out, does he have value and is he worth going after? Short answer, I do think he's good. Long answer, he's pretty confusing with how he works mathematically. The best comparison I can give you is he works exactly like John Harrison. If you don't remember who Harrison was, let me go ahead and bring him up. And don't worry, we are going to give you some ways to like find this and to be easier. So here's Harrison, old school officer. We've had this guy long time. He came out in 2019, but first round of combat ignores 70% of the opponent's shield. Again, the phrasing of how some of this works is a little bit confuzzling. So let's use some handy dandy tools to figure this out. So explaining officer shield traits, the math for final shield deflection percentage is this mathematical formula above. So you're going to have 80% plus or minus all the additive bonuses. An additive bonus is example, Strange New World Pike, who we just talked about, or the Titan's max fortification ability. Then you're going to multiply that by 1 minus the multiplicative abilities like Harrison and Strange New World Kirk to get our magic number. Now with these combined or individually, depending on the scenario of how we set them up, we can actually take the shield down to 0, as in like, even if the shield is still alive, say the shield has 2 million health, we can make it to where the shield stops nothing, as you can see in the screenshot here. Now you can do that by either running something, like if you had a Max Harrison, you were Pike Moreau Harrison, you can do that for 1 round, because keep in mind, Harrison only works for 1 round. You can make something like that, or say Strange New World Kirk, where he has full synergization, and that means that he'll have 100%. Or a combination of the above, hence stuff like this that you can see in the log. So whether or not or how you do it, it's all based around this complicated formula. And the reason I call it complicated is because it is. Why do we have an additive bonus and a multiplicative bonus for doing the same thing? We're just making a formula for no reason. It reminds me much how the isolytic works. Remember the isolytic cascade and the isolytic damage, how we're taking all the other stuff and just multiplying on top of that, and how confusing that was? I actually made a graphic for that too, because how freaking confusing it was. I'm not gonna give you the isolytic graphic. I'm gonna give you a classic graphic. Hull breach, one of my favorite things in the game. I love hull breach. So here, this is the mathematical formula for that shield stuff that we're talking about. This is the one just to calculate your damage with hull breach, and none of this includes isolytic. So a lot of the mathematical formulas in this game have gotten very complicated, in my opinion, for no reason. I don't like how complicated they've gotten. So Harrison and Strange New World James T. Kirk are multiplicative bonuses to get to the magic number, which in your hopes is to get it to 0%. Because if the shields are active at any given time, if there are shields active on the opponent's ship, they natively, as in their standard operation, will stop 80% of any non-mitigated damage. So if you did a 1 million shot and you mitigated 70%, that means that there's 300,000 left. Shields would stop 80% of that 300,000. Make sense? Good. Means they would stop 240, and then that means you'd have 60,000 that made it to the hull after all the blah, 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 blah happened. And again, we're not even counting isolytic. So after we go through all those different things, this is how you get there. Now, the next question you might ask is, okay, well, what officers / abilities actually work like this? As in, what things actually allow me to do all those things? Like, how can I get the math, whether it's research or max fortification, which you heard me mention already. And lucky for you, I made a chart for that as well. Now, keep in mind that I've ignored things like Yuki, Vimit, etc., who will do a reduction, or old school Spock, who will do an inflation for the actual health of these shields. We're only talking about the deflection modifiers. So, officers that do that: Janeway's captain's ability, Strange New World Pike, both his captain ability and his officer ability have different ways to affect shield deflection. Harry Mudd, TOS Uhura. Then we have research that'll do it, like the KSG shield mitigation, or the Immortal shield mitigation reduction, or the lower deck spirit, or finally the Titan shield, which is part of that max fortification. And then you have these. Thankfully, these are the only multiplicatives that we have so far: Harrison, Strange World James Kirk. My fear is, because this list is long, this list is going to get long. But again, I think it's just making it a complicated mathematical thing. I mean, if I've got to make multiple charts, just try to break it down in layman's terms, it's a little much. But beyond that, what is the simple answer? The simple answer is James Kirk good? And the short answer is yes, he is. He is viable, especially when you can max out with synergy this ability right here, and thus remove the ability of hostiles to have any working shields. And then you combine that with things like Q, Belana Torres, Nurse Chapel, all those below decks to give you massive damage, and you've taken away their shields, and hopefully you've got decent mitigation. Maybe you're using Boimler, or you're using, Tom Paris, whatever you're using, especially below deck stacking. This is a very unique ability and a nice ability. And then you've got this one right here, which I think blends in pretty nice with it, increasing your weapons damage by X%, maxing out at 3,500, which in today's game actually matters. And if you're a player, I was talking to a level 28 player today who managed to get this player, well, that 200% actually matters to a lower level player. So it is a good officer. The only drawback is he's a confusing officer, because the way that he's worded, you would think that he works exactly like, say, Strange New World Pike does, and they would work together. But again, as you can see with the math, that's not exactly the case. That's not how it works. Shout out Jace, who did this log for me, because clearly I have not unlocked James Kirk on mine. So here you have it. He's basically another Harrison, which I think is useful. He's a better version of Harrison. He just only works against hostiles. He's not limited to one round. He has two really good abilities overall. but it's still also a little bit complicated because maybe he's not better than something else you're using that, say, is an isolytic set. Like, I love the Enterprise E Picard, Enterprise E Data isolytic set. I'll even throw Janeway in as a third, and then I'll have all that other stuff below deck. So I'm just creating massive damage, right? Just like pow, 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 pow. And then I would also have Janeway's captain's ability, right? So it just comes down to what you're looking for in a hostile group. We have a lot of different hostile groups in the game. Now, this is currently my favorite, right? Janeway is captain, who is giving me the red alert raised shields, which is increasing my shield mitigation, bypass, whatever we want to call it. I hate calling it mitigation. But I also have multiple isolytic, 3 different isolytic officer abilities, plus all my below decks, makes this thing really, really punchy. So yes, there is value to James Kirk if you're curious and thinking about going after him. The question just simply comes down to, will you find use to him personally, as in running him out in your different runs? I currently have like 4 different hostile crews I use. I think that's the only drawback to an officer like these new Strange New World officers, is we already have very good hostile crews. And I'm not saying he's not good, but he comes in to mix in with what you already have as a really, really good set. The entire Strange New World set is arguably the best PvE grinding set in the game in terms of its totality, because you have multiple PvE sets right there. Like, it can be, you can build 2 complete crews out of this, and both of them be very effective for 40s and 50s and even lower level grinding. Nothing's going to match PMC, obviously, but still. Anyway, like I said, this video is a little bit long because it was a little bit complicated because we had to go through math, and I know, gross math, but I think it's good to understand how things work. So hopefully this helps you out. If you enjoyed it, live long and plunder. Stay safe for the Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch the next one. All of this can be provided in Discord or Facebook if you so desire to have these to help you out with your own understanding, or if you still would like to talk more about it, hit me up. DMs are open. Love every single one of you. Appreciate every single one of you. And we're out.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.